to the Monday, January 25th, 2021 Cohasset Select Board meeting. Tonight's meeting is being conducted on the Zoom platform and live streamed on Cohasset 143 TV, as well as Cohasset's Facebook page. Is that correct, Chris? Yeah. The public is also invited to participate on the Zoom platform, which can be accessed using the link provided at the top of the posted agenda for tonight's meeting. Members of the board and other scheduled participants will be able to participate when called on by the chair. Board members will be able to ask questions of any participant. All votes taken at this meeting will be by roll call. Members of the public who wish to ask questions are asked to utilize the question and answer feature on Zoom, including typing in their name and address for the public record. Either Carrie or I will review the questions and direct them to the appropriate participant for a response. The meeting is also being recorded and will be available for later viewing on Cohasset 143 TV. So with that, I'll call the roll, beginning with Jack.
Jack Creighton here.
Corey Evans here.
Diane Kennedy here.
Paul Schubert here.
Carrie Thompson here.
And I'd like to ask everybody to join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you. Thanks everybody too for your time on a Monday night. We have a busy week ahead with a lot of things going on, which is good. 'Tis the season. Just to kind of glimpse what's ahead of us in the next hour. We're here for basically two main reasons. The second item we're going to take up is the ratification of retainer agreements. We discussed this a little bit last week, or at our last meeting. We postponed till tonight so that we could have the two agreements that are currently not ratified with the town that we've been operating under for a number of years. One with Clifford and Kenny, who does employment counsel, and one with town council, who provides general municipal services. That we'll discuss those both later in the meeting, but we're only going to be addressing Clifford and Kenny in general tonight. But the main part of the meeting that we'll jump into, and we have Michelle Leary with us tonight, thank you, Michelle, is to review the RFQ for legal services. Basically, the town hasn't RFP'd or solicited legal services except when needed. And we didn't have we didn't have anybody doing land use counsel for whatever. We haven't RFP'd in decades, over 25 years, in fact. And it's a best practice to do these kinds of things every 3-5 years. That's something we can discuss going forward, but it is time and to throw out cast a wide net so we can find the best possible representation for the town of Cohasset. We are going into it, and one of the things that we need to decide as a board, as the authority that hires counsel, is how we want to structure counsel. Whether we want to go with one, comprehensive firm or not. And those are discussions that I wanted to have earlier, but we are going to postpone those till we at least get the RFP out or RFQ out on the streets, just so we don't prejudice the process. We want to be able to just put it out there and as cast a wide net as possible, get the best results. And then when we go through the evaluation process, we can start building a plan to get the best representation for the town. And we also will be seeking input, which Michelle will help us understand how we're going to do that, from some of the committees that work closely with various special councils, whether it's our land use boards, et cetera. So the draft RFQ was sent to us. We have that, and I'm going to turn the podium over to Michelle and Chris to kind of walk us through that document, and we can ask questions, make some edits now. And then if Michelle, if you could kind of tee up also in your conversation, just sort of what when this would be ready to be put out there, what is the anticipated response time, and so that we can look ahead at how we're going to make our next decisions.
Sure. If you'd like to give me screen sharing capability, I'll start with that. I'll start with the timeline.
So when we review the RFQ, if there's any questions, we can input dates as needed.
You're co-host. You're good to go. You should be good to go.
Thank you. Okay, so here's just a simple document outlining the dates needed. So tonight, you all have a copy of the RFQ for legal services, so that has been completed. We'd like for you to review and redline the RFQ as you see fit, and then we'll finalize the RFQ. During that process, we should identify a group of candidates that you'd like to send the RFQ to. Typically, when we do post it, we'll post it in Combis and on the central register. However, it's always nice to be able to send it to, the incumbents. So we'd send it to general counsel and we'd send it to all the counsel representing Cohasset to date, and make sure they're aware of it. We do have to advertise it. And when we advertise in the central register, you have to advertise before Wednesday for the following Monday publication. So that's something to keep in mind. We don't want to miss those deadlines because that pushes it out quite a bit. So what I see here is if we have all those red lines back, we can advertise it for February 8th. And I'm sorry, there's a typo in Combis. We'd also publish that on February 8th as well. The newspaper, we'd put it in the newspaper of your choice. As you say, you want to cast a wide net. So we put it in the Mariner, but you also want to put it elsewhere.
Can I hold there? Do you mind if we interrupt with some questions? So for example, I know that the Mass Municipal Association has a, I think it's a monthly newsletter, and there's a lot of services that are advertised through that. I mean, is that something that, if it's monthly, we might miss a deadline, but is that something that's typically part of our outreach?
Yep. So we would reach out to them. Like you said, sometimes it does extend the timeline a little bit, but it does cast that wider net that you're looking for.
So, and what's the date? Sorry, Carrie, I'll get you in a sec. What's the date for the Wednesday before the February 8th?
So it's just, I believe, let me look. I'll tell you right now.
Sorry, I could pull up a calendar too. I just want to get the, it's not this Wednesday, it would be next Wednesday.
next
February
Wednesday.
3rd, for the
Yep.
3rd, February 3rd.
February
Okay.
3rd.
Okay,
So that gives a little bit of time.
okay.
So
So Carrie, I'm sorry, Carrie had a question.
No,
sorry.
on that note, I would like to make sure we're getting as much, diverse applications as possible. Is there a way for us to encourage, women, people of color to apply for this?
Sure. Yep. There is, and that we would input directly into the RFQ document itself.
Great.
So during this process of reviewing the RFQ and publishing it in the central register, I would encourage you to come up with a subcommittee that's going to review the RFQs once they're in. Oftentimes this takes a little time to put together, and when we go through the RFQ, you'll see there's all different components of the RFQ. So you may want someone from zoning and someone from conservation on the committee to review different aspects of the proposals.
I want to dig deeper into that, but can we maybe hold off on that till
Yeah.
we get into the RFQ and we see
Sure.
what we're talking about?
Yep.
Good, just everybody.
So what we
Corey's
have
up on
here
screen.
is to receive the final bid submissions by March 22nd. And that would give them quite a bit of time to respond. When you look at the RFQ, you'll see it's going to take some time for them to respond and to respond well. So you don't want to rush it. And also for the firms that aren't very savvy on responding to RFQs, and there are several out there, this will give them enough time to be able to satisfy the documents we need. I would like to review everything the week of March 22nd through April 9th, and then identify the top 3 firms the week of April 12th. And we talk about the top 3 firms. What we're talking about is not the top 3 firms overall. We're talking about the top 3 firms, perhaps maybe in each category. So it could be a lengthy process, but that's for you to decide as how you want to go about that. You would interview the top 3 candidates the week of April 26th and award the bid the first week in May. The ultimate goal here, I believe, is to award a contract beginning next fiscal year. So you do have some leeway in here with your timing, but here are some preliminary dates.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the board? All righty.
And then for the RFQ. Okay. So here we have the RFQ. I don't know if you've read, if everyone's had time to read through it. It's pretty lengthy. And the way we developed this RFQ is we took many different RFQs from the state bid list. There were several communities that went out to bid for legal counsel services. This is comprised of probably 4 or 5 different communities in what they were looking for. And we inputted it in our RFQ to make sure that we had the most broad, however, targeted for each individual segment. So if you look here, what we're asking for legal services is, number one, we're asking for a town council. And we're asking that they specialize in all of these items here. And if you see an item listed underneath town council that you believe should be taken out or should be maybe dealt with by special counsel, we can move these items around. So when people respond, when we get candidates that respond to this RFQ, when they respond to town council, we're anticipating that they don't respond to town council and labor and employment and all of these subcategories. Because what most communities have come up with is when they put this RFQ out, they get someone that specializes just in being town council. And then there's someone who specializes only in labor and employment. So while you have several different categories here, you are going to probably have several different attorneys responding to this. You may have 1 or 2 firms that respond to it in total, but typically you're going to have legal counsel for each segment.
And Michelle, as we kind of start drilling down onto the different segments, are there any restrictions as to, let's say we get, I don't know, let's say we don't get any wholesale firm, and that's something, and we decide we want to rethink how we approach this whole thing based on our conversations. Is that something we can just do?
Yep. So
We could say that none of these really meet what our needs are.
Yep. So anytime you put out an RFQ or an RFP, we do have the final say and can say at the end, this really didn't work out for us. We are going to go back out to bid because, maybe our RFQ wasn't targeted enough for what we're looking for. And then you would go through the process again.
Okay.
So the way this is written, there's a segment for town council, labor and employment, environmental land use, litigation, and special counsel. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're looking for, or if you'd like to add or subtract something, or if you would like to combine a couple of these items. But I would look for guidance from you to do that.
Okay. Paul?
So the RFQ, when it goes out and you'll get the response, you may have, 4 firms that are labor and employment, and you may have 1 firm for the whole kit and caboodle, and you may have 1 for environmental and land use. So if one that does the entire, can they say, we will handle the whole thing, but we may subcontract out certain high specialty litigation? Is that possible?
So that's how it would work. So you would have,
Okay.
you would see the 1 in total, and then you'd have several different for labor and employment, and you would just qualify that 1 category of their bid.
Okay, thanks.
So I mean, this is one reason why I didn't want to drill too far down into the evaluative process or even what we're looking for, because I can see like there's so many advantages to having some of this under one roof, but we don't know if we're going to actually, get that kind of a response. One of the questions I have is if in best practices, if anybody knows the answer to this, is whether litigation really resides with the town, or is that still a niche kind of market?
If I could take a stab at that, Diane, it really kind of depends. I mean, sometimes there are people who specialize in litigation. If you need someone to do that, oftentimes it can follow, like, for example, labor and employment, all representation, even, representing in front of boards and, that there's the GLMC and MCAT and arbitrations, that would be the Labor and Employment Council that would do that work. You wouldn't like bring in someone else typically to do that. That said, if you had a land use and environmental or stuff, it may be that you wanted to have a special counsel that was particularly good at, litigating certain items, go out and do that. It's often broken out, but it's often combined as well. Because the things that are litigated mostly at the town level are planning, environmental, zoning issues, right? I mean, and torts, right? Injuries or property damage. That's the vast majority of cases involve those two things. So sometimes they'll follow with the environmental land use, if that's where it is. And again, in terms of tort stuff, that can often just be part of like a general counsel review. But again, I think one of the things, even in this, I've seen different models from my prior experience in prior communities, but here in Massachusetts, it's different. Even in the 7 years I've been here, the world's changed. I mean, look, the firm that represented the town for a long time disappeared, right? and so there aren't. Unfortunately, there was no MMA in person this year. Right? Normally, you'd be able to walk the aisles and you'd be able to meet and see different people. And there's multiple law firms on that floor, just like there's multiple accounting firms and engineering firms. And there aren't that many that do it all, at least not in this area, because firms tend to be a little bit more regional, except for one or two that are pretty statewide. There are firms that do North Shore work, there's firms that do South Shore work, because you have to travel, right? In that pre-COVID world, and hopefully a post-COVID world, you have to make physical appearances, and it's not such an easy thing to go from Marblehead to Cohasset, So you tend to have firms that are a little bit more regional, but there are a couple that are bigger, and they'll have councils that are kind of scattered around the state. Again, I'm giving you a broader answer. But,
Yeah, just one thing to consider, everybody, and Jack, I see your hand, is, I'm just wondering whether some kind of general litigation should fall under general counsel work. I don't know. It's just something to consider. Jack?
Yeah, I recall, and I just can't recall exactly when, probably like 5 or 6 years ago, I think when I was on Concom, we dealt with this. And my understanding at that time is town council, Paul Dorenzis, who was appointed as town council. And by the way, just as I mentioned last week, that was appointed in the town in 1996. So he is in fact town council, and he was appointed as the town council, not the firm, but Paul Dorenzis. And there were some other things which I haven't been able to track down yet, although that is on page 116 of the town report in 1996. So that's important to cover that discrepancy. But that the town council would then, as that individual attorney, because the town evidently wanted one person that they could go to, and then that attorney would then delegate out as he saw fit, and obviously in consultation. So I think that was the that was the model. And I think there's somewhere around, and I haven't seen it recently, where it specifically says that they're not hiring a law firm, that they are, in this case, Paul Dorenzis. So I'm sure we can find that someplace, because I think there are some written agreements around someplace. I just don't know how to find them.
You know, you bring up an interesting point, and I think this is something we should, just keep in the back of our minds as we look at the RFQ and then eventually set up an evaluative process and make some decisions on what we want to end up doing. But, I always liken it to the doctor. You go to your general practitioner and, they keep you from getting high cholesterol or being overweight, or, put you on diets if you need that, and kind of they're the risk prevention center. And then God forbid you need an orthopedic surgeon, or you have something more serious, they may refer you within network, or you might need to go out of network. So I think that's how I try to simplify this kind of monumental task. And if it helps you see this, I just share that as some perspective on how you might want to think about how we approach council.
Just one other thing, if I can.
Corey, yeah.
So this predates me a long way, but
Let me jump you, Chris. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
just got a couple questions. And Michelle, whoever's sharing, do you mind taking that down so we can see each other? Is that okay? Okay, thanks. So I just, and I want to follow up on what Jack was saying, because this is kind of tied in the same thing. In this RFQ, should we be specifying a time period? And I bring that up because I think, when I hear that, there's a contract that was signed in 1996 and we don't know where it is, and we don't know exactly, whether it's been refreshed. I mean, I don't have anything in my company or in my life where, I haven't reviewed it fairly regularly. I mean, I don't have a contract with anybody that dates back to 1996. So, is it appropriate for us in the RFQ to say, this is going to be for a time period? Because I think part of fixing this would be establishing, I would like to see it to be 3 years. That way, as the board refreshes, I don't know, and I'm looking to Chris and Michelle on this, if that's too short of a time period, but that's part of our responsibility, is to be sure the stuff is refreshed and done properly. And it's kind of, we're here because we haven't been doing that. So, please give me your thoughts on adding a time period to this RFQ, if now is appropriate, or we do it later on.
Yeah, or do you do it during the contract,
So you can do it now. You would also do it in the contract. But you're absolutely right. 3 years is the average time frame. What we do in all of our town contracts is we give 3 years with 2 one-year extensions to bring it up to a total of 5 years. And then you go back out to RFP.
No, I would agree with Corey's assessment. I think that this has been languishing for too long. I do believe that this has been addressed since 1996, and a lot more recent than that, but I don't have the documents. I've been an ongoing search for documents, in which I will continue, and hopefully we'll get all this stuff, because I think it is important, because we don't want to keep people, forever, because contracts do last forever unless you put an end to them. So it's kind of disappointing it's gone this long without doing that, but that's what we're here today to resolve.
Move forward. Thanks.
Proper.
Paul?
So what do the other towns do? Do they have like a 3 and a 2 additional extension years? Or are there towns that would have like a 5 extended another 5, for example?
So through researching this, Paul, I've seen several different ways. I've seen 3 years with 2 one-year extensions. I've seen 5 years with a couple 2-year extensions. I've seen a blanket 5-year, no extensions. I haven't seen any go out as long as 10 years in total. I think they typically, for some reason, cap at 9 and don't go to that 10th year. But I think it just runs the gamut, and it's all in what you're comfortable with. So it's kind of a clean slate, and you guys can really decide what's best for the community.
So I wonder if maybe in the RFQ, we come up with a statement that says something like the, Cohasset Select Board anticipates, rebidding or reevaluating council every 3 years. And so we're not necessarily saying what the contract terms are going to be, because, we may end up having all the same council again, because we're very happy. Like, we just don't know where this is gonna go or how it's gonna be structured. So I think to, in the RFQ, to limit us to any kind of parameters for a contract is a different than just saying the board anticipates, the town of Cohasset anticipates, resoliciting legal every couple of years or whatever, and honestly, we should be doing that with every, contractor we have, whether it's engineering or bond counsel or audit firms, et cetera. And, we have tried to set this, pull this trigger a number of times in areas. And it's just something I think as a board have a responsibility to stay on top of. Carrie.
3 years almost seems like a long time to me, knowing how fast the world goes and how quickly things can change and just what happens. Michelle, does anyone ever do shorter than 3 years? And is there anything in place for us if we're not happy or satisfied with service, or if something happens within those 3 years? I know it's probably a lot harder to get rid of people if we're just not happy, or if something happens with a 3-year contract. Is there anything built in to protect us in that regard? Not that I'm saying we won't pick qualified, good, competent people, but it just seems a little bit long knowing how quickly things happen nowadays.
Sure. So I haven't seen any less than 3 years, to be honest. I think it does take some time for legal counsel to get their footing and get acquainted with the community.
Yeah.
But in all of our contracts, there is an exit clause for any reason.
That was my question.
Yep.
Okay. Perfect.
Corey, and then Jack.
Oh, sorry. Just actually on the flip side of that, Carrie's a great question. Is a 3-year limiting? I mean, and again, I don't think 3 years any longer than that. And I like the 3-1-1 system, but I also don't want to push firms away and limit the pool, because there are some firms that won't take a 3-year contract. Have you seen any of that? Do you think that 3 years is enough time that we'll get a sufficient number of?
I think 3 years is sufficient. I think that's common practice. So I think you'll find some really viable candidates with a 3-year term.
And again, in the RFQ, if we can come up with that statement that just says the board anticipates, reevaluating council every 3 years, and that doesn't tie us to anything, and it gives us the opportunity to negotiate each individual contract based on whatever. If we go with a full service firm, we may not want to commit to a full service firm doing everything in-house in that firm for 3 years even. We might just say, oh, well, this is the only employment firm that we were happy with right now, so let's just keep it here until, so I think we need to give ourselves just blankets, but I think it's fair to, I think we need to be able to negotiate at the time, but I think it's fair to project that we anticipate doing this on a regular basis. Jack?
Yeah, well, I think the town will need to have some kind of exit. Typically, when you exit early, you have to pay the contract term of the contract, which keeps you from doing it rashly. I think we want to make very sure we don't have a so-called evergreen contract. Evergreen contracts are really green, like money green, but they're really green for the person who gets it, they're not for the town. So we want to avoid that. I think 3 is, certainly the minimum. No firm is going to be willing to devote the resources necessary to do a good job if they can be fired after a year, or if it's anticipated. They understand if they screw up, they get fired. So I think 3, and I think 3 seems to be where we are. But we can discuss all of this later on. I think that's what the redlining is all about as we look through this, because I'm sure there'll be other things.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from board members? All right. Corey?
Chairman Kennedy, you mentioned earlier that you wanted to talk about the selection process. I just didn't want to lose that thread, because I've got a couple questions on the selection committee too, but we can do that later on. I just didn't want to.
Yep. Let me just wrap up. Any other questions on the actual RFQ and the general structure of it? So what Michelle has asked us to do kind of ASAP, and maybe by Thursday, is just go through if there's anything, grammatical errors that you pick up or anything that you think needs to be corrected, just send them to Michelle. Clearly, if it's any kind of material change or any kind of structural change on the RFQ, it would need to be something that we all agreed to. So, if there's something, if you flag something that you think requires board input as opposed to just kind of text editing, please let me know so we can have a discussion about that. Paul?
So one quick thing, just to kind of go over this, the RFQ is going to show probably 6 different types of law that we'll be looking at from the town. We may very well get some firms or one firm that does all, and we may get individuals for individual specific law pieces. I just want to be sure when we send this out that is how it's approached from the RFQ, that we want to get law firms that may just be complete environmental law firms, and so that they are willing to say we'll bid just on the individual section. I want to make sure that's clear for when that goes out.
Sure. So
Yep.
Paul, within the RFQ, if you look towards the back of the RFQ, there are sheets for each law firm to fill out based on their expertise. And it does state either bid on all, some, well, one, bid on what you're comfortable with, what your firm's comfortable with. So it is spelled out there towards the end of the RFQ.
Okay, good. So as long as that's clear to the incoming folks when they go to bid on it.
Michelle, what do you need before we go into the next step of kind of evaluation and setting up committees? What else do you need from us specific to this? We have the dates. We're going to just keep with these dates.
Yep.
Do you need any feedback in terms of posting or where to advertise? I mean, I look to you and Chris, and the industry knows better than we.
Sure. So I think we're all set with where we're posting, unless anyone here has an idea that maybe somewhere we haven't posted yet that you think would be advantageous. I welcome all ideas, so anything you have would be great. But as far as anything else, just the red line document. And if anyone has any specific hangups with a segment of the RFQ, just give me a call. We'll walk through it, and maybe we can change it to accommodate the needs of the community better.
And then we'll definitely, we're all okay with adding some general statement about how the board will, be evaluating and whatever, we'll be rebidding.
I'm fine with that.
Reassessing whatever, every few years or something, and then Carrie's state. Do we have my internet's going wackadoodle and I'm not even plugged in.
Yep.
Do we have a statement, Chris, that of the town that just in terms of any hiring that, we encourage women and minorities and BIPOC?
Yeah, there's standard language that we have and we can most certainly use. Yeah.
So that's included as well.
Yeah, we can include it. It's not in there now, but it carries. I'm gathering from the response that it's something that you all want to put in there, so we can put that in.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yep.
And
Yeah, go ahead, Corey.
no, and to Paul's point, I think I'm just looking at this quickly. We should put, I think, some language in the beginning that says, the town encourages, welcomes firms that are both specialty and non-specialty. Because if you look at it this way, you see all this stuff. It's not to the bottom that we kind of split it out. So if we can move that up top, I think that'd be nice.
Yep, sounds great. Okay, Corey, you want to take off with some of your comments regarding setting up an evaluation process?
Yeah, I mean, I don't
And
really
again,
have
I
too
think
many
the
ideas.
board is
Sorry.
gonna.
You're on a delay, so sorry. I just
No,
interrupted you. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
You're now in a submarine. So
No,
I'm
all I was
just
gonna
going to go. Okay, so I see that there's to submit we have to have 8 copies. I'd like to be sure that it's important to me that all submissions we have are available to the whole board. Not necessarily that the whole board is going to review them, but at least they're easily accessible to the whole board. That way, any one of us can look at them. And it looks like the select committee or the selection process committee, whatever, is going to, it says some committee appointments. I'm just want to be sure that that's, I don't know how many select board members we want, but obviously we want 1 or 2 on that. Is that how we're imagining this working? The selection committee does their work and then brings it in front of the entire board, but any individual board member can look at the entire portfolio of RFQs. Is that kind of a reasonable expectation? If that was a question.
Yeah, I
Does
think,
anybody want to?
you know, this is, we're kind of blazing territory here. I think all of you need input, quite frankly, particularly in town council. And if we're having one unified firm, that matters too, because the town council is the most visible person, right? Town meeting, select board, advisory, et cetera, and the person that you tend to tap most frequently. I mean, labor and employment is more cyclical. I mean, we're in a cycle right now where we're using them a lot more because we're in the middle of our 3-year renegotiation process for collective bargaining agreements. Though, you know, we do deal with labor council and other times too. So, you know, I think we can sketch out the process a little bit more, and it may be that you know, there are a couple of different groups that get carved up, right? Maybe some folks that specialize. You know, obviously, all of you see everything, right? And then maybe there's a small group that specializes in the, you know, we a couple of the staff and a couple of the boards that do, you know, land use and planning, and they can comment more specifically on those attorneys. Obviously, it's more staff and HR that would look more at labor and employment because they're the ones who deal with it most of the time. Though again, everyone has access to that. It's the same thing with, you know, if there's a specialty counsel. The only specialty counsel the board currently has is kind of niche and local. From time to time, those pop up. Like, you know, the board retained a, you know, you don't retain a cable contractor until you need one, right? You know, because you only renew those every 5 or 10 years. So we're not going to put one on retainer, right, at this point, because there's no real need for that. Again, unless you end up with a big firm where, you know, the whole thing. And in that case, with specialty counsel, it's usually specialty questions you want to ask because you need them for a very specific reason. You want to, you know, whether it's cable franchising or, you know, licensing or something like that.
So I wonder if the first crack at looking at this is with us all. Because that is going to be the point at which we say, hey, look, we got 2 firms, they do it all. We're starting here, you know, because then there's going to be interviews. And then that's when we reach out to planning and zoning and Concom, the people that have more needs on like a kind of regular operational basis than we do. And then we kind of build that evaluative structure. And Michelle, if it's like, if this like is untenable or doesn't seem to make sense, but I think until we know sort of how we want to structure things, it seems silly to just throw, you know, we might only have one, for example, response for labor and employment, and we might only have one response for environmental, and we may have 2 full service firms. So I think until we think that, and the 5 of us whose responsibility it is to make sure we make the right choices, have that conversation about, boy, this is appealing for this reason. Let's move this forward. Let's get this input from this person, that kind of thing. And that would mean doing so right after the March 22nd deadline. Does that seem to make sense, Corey?
Are you basically saying that whatever this committee is, we are all ex officio members as select board members?
I mean, ultimately, we do the hire, so no. I think we're the first pass at the evaluating and figuring out which ones we want to pursue in terms of interviewing and getting feedback from other boards on. So I don't see it as ex officio. I see it as like the first line.
Well, it's a matter of semantics.
Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all ought to be involved with this, not
Yeah.
dismissing ex officio. I think we're all, you know, we all have the decision and we have the input and
Yeah.
the experience saying this is what we want. So I think it ought to be that first round. If we get one, then we say, you know what, this is what we're looking for. So it's done and settled, but I suspect we should probably get through, the first round and probably slim it down to what we think are reasonable and then approach planning and Concom and some other for input, because the buck stops here in bottom line.
Absolutely.
Corey?
Yeah, and just, I guess I want to be clear that I want this board to see everything that's submitted, including things that through your process, you've determined we can't hire these people. I still want to see them. And then I want to hear from both of you, both Chris and Michelle, why this firm is not appropriate. But I don't want to miss them, and I do think that, we may get 10 and only 2 are actually applicable, but I want to see all 10. And then you guys can guide us and say, listen, these 7 really aren't appropriate, and this is why. That's kind of the process I'd be looking for if we all, okay.
Sure, and
Yeah,
that's how
and
the
I think
process
ultimately we have to work that way. The board and our manager have to work that way in terms of legal, especially. So that is probably the best way to do it. Jack?
No, I was going to echo what Corey is saying. And that's when I said ex officio, what I really meant to convey was, by the virtue of our official position, we're on the committee from day one. And I would say that we should be part of that. I would suggest that we ask some of the committees if they want to have at least an observer status, because I know there's some strong sentiment from some of the boards and commissions that they really do want to have an input, and that we don't have to make them a voting member, but I think we should allow them to have an observing member.
Yeah, absolutely, and that goes for staff. Like Jeff Summers, who's the Concom. I don't remember his official title, sorry, manager, but I mean, we need to do that. We need to hear from our committees and boards. I don't, and again, the buck will stop with us. So we evaluate anybody that's in the running for anything. We get the relevant parties to, help us review, or if we're bringing people in for interviewing, we invite them to the public meeting and I'm really confident that we will be able to do this. And when we see kind of the net of what the haul that we're bringing in, we'll be able to, I think there'll be guideposts to help us know exactly where we need to go with this. So, okay. So anything left on this? Great discussion. I think this is, I'm really excited to be doing this and to kind of reset or redouble or reinforce or whatever we're doing. This is good business practice. So thank you, Michelle. Thanks so much for the hard work and doing the research.
Sure.
Okay, and everybody will get any red line type comments to Michelle by Thursday, so that and Michelle, if you want to just we did talk about whether we would have any of the like planning, zoning, Concom in particular, or their agents, just look at and water sewer too, which
We still have you, but you're kind of in chops.
Diane, you just froze.
I know, it's funny. It keeps saying my Wi-Fi is unstable, and I'm not on Wi-Fi. I'm plugged into an Ethernet. So, so go figure. Just the question is whether we should get any input on the RFQ from some of the maybe even just people in the building, like Concom agent, planning, that kind of thing. Or have you already done that?
Sending it out to every member of the board and commission. That's not a hard thing to do. Say this is the wider net we cast, the better off we're going to be. Doesn't mean they have to deliberate or weigh in, but it's just so easy to say, this is the RFP. Feel free to send your suggestions in.
Sure, I'm happy to do that tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay. if we're done, we're done. Michelle, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you. Good job.
Thanks.
Okay. And then lastly, just, so we had this on our agenda last meeting. We didn't get to it. Chris has sent us, because we didn't have the information in enough time, but Chris has sent us the current agreement with Clifford and Kenny, who was sort of approved by a board a number of years ago, but not, wasn't ratified formally. So we would like to ratify that agreement tonight. Obviously, I'll have Chris kind of walk us through anything different from the 2018 contract. And then we're still waiting for Paul Durensis to submit a current contract that will get us kind of through the next couple of months for us to ratify as well.
I thought on
Chris, you want to walk us
January
through the
12th
Clifford and Kenny?
So Chris, you never received anything? Because on January 12th, it was indicated that it was either there or almost there.
Well, I did speak with Paul about it and he asked for some time and I said, fine. So that's why we didn't present anything on the 12th. He wanted to do something different and have something a little more elaborate. And I said, fine. And I've been waiting for him for the last 2 weeks to get me back something back and I don't have it. And I had confirmed this with him by email. So, so rather than hold the Clifford and Kenny piece up, and again, I'm not suggesting we avoid ratifying it. In fact, one option the board has is just to simply ratify that we have an agreement with them, and we, you can get the terms. Now it's a little loosey goosey, but it's really up to all of you. I mean, they've been doing the work. It's not like Fortunately, when Deutsche Williams broke up, it was kind of we were just all in flux and things were juggling. So it's not like Paul Durensis has stopped being town council. And a lot and stuff kind of fought, and the attorneys that have been doing work with him kind of continued to, like Kim Salant, for example, who was quite a central character in all of this. Clifford Kenny at the same time has been doing labor work for the last 3 years, and what I sent you was updated for now. It's basically 3 terms. It's an hourly rate, $195. It's the monthly retainer, which is for questions and basic stuff, which is often how we deal with a lot of things in between contracts. That's $525. And then it's just a prior member of the board wanted explicitly that there's termination at will. Generally, professional service agreements are that way. They have to be. You can't be bound to somebody, particularly a professional service, right? If you're it could be that they don't want to do the work anymore. Something can happen to them, right? Firms sometimes break up, and that's what happened 3 years ago, right? So you can't be bound to them, and we don't owe them any money until they do services, right? So they're paid just for being there. So that's the Clifford Kenny thing. Now, again, it's funny. I went back and pulled the one from 2018, and they actually referenced it. The monthly is 500 in one set, and 525 in another, which is pretty funny. So I'm not sure if I even picked it up then. But if the board wants to do that now, that would be great. If you don't, that's up to you. I mean, they're still doing work. In fact, we're in the middle of contract negotiations.
Are they all paid? Are all these attorneys all paid?
Yeah, no, we're paying people. I get regular monthly bills. In fact, I think I have some out there that I have to pay. So we've been paying monthly bills for Brooks and Durensis for 3 years. We've been paying monthly bills for Clifford and Kenny for 3 years, and they've been appearing and they've been appearing in front of all of you. I mean, on issues. So there's been nothing, nothing.
Right, and these are just the two contracts for whatever reason, or agreements that just don't have an affirmation in a select board meeting in recent years. So we kind of just wanted to clean that up administratively. And I do know that Paul, because I spoke with him as well last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, January 12th, and then subsequently, he is intending to present us something, but I think he is trying to make sure it's right and presentable, and wants to put his best foot forward. So I do think it's important for the board to know that Kim Salant has retired. And we found that out kind of by accident. So we still need to follow up with Paul to understand how the litigation is going to be transferred within the firm. But again, that is a concern and something we probably should talk about at a future meeting. And another reason why I'm glad we're RFQing for legal services. So I do anticipate Paul will have something to us in the next couple of weeks.
Well,
Corey, did you raise your hand?
go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, I was just saying, we just saw Kim 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago with Treats Pond.
It was just before
do we have
Christmas.
Yep.
Do we have a new
December
counsel for that?
15th.
I have not been informed of anyone assigned to the work. In fact, I was not directly informed that Kim had left the firm. So,
Okay, can you follow up and get us, because that's something that's literally ongoing, and I know it's going to be coming up quickly. So could you
Alright.
try to get us an answer on that?
I will.
Thank you.
So
And
moving
I've got
to
a
Clifford and
couple-
Kenny. Yeah.
I got a couple
Okay.
questions. Sorry, I'm out of
Go ahead,
turn here.
Corey.
My apologies. Okay,
Nope,
if you don't
go
mind,
ahead.
Chris, I just got a couple very specific questions. And I've done some research on this to kind of figure out how we got here. And just let me know if this is how you recall things happening. This is my understanding. I understand that you brought this contract in front of the board on February 27th, 2018. Is that how you recall?
Yes, this and the one for Murphy Hesse. I brought them both.
Okay. And I understand that this contract was not signed or not officially approved by the board on that date. Do you remember why?
Yeah, because one of the members asked for it was Chairman McCarthy specifically asked for language that said they were terminable at will.
Did you get any other feedback on this contract besides that?
No, that was it. The board. I mean, again, I think Paul and Diane were both on the board at the time, and
Yes, it was.
everyone was comfortable with the firms. There was no issue with the firms. It was just getting that language, and I went back and we got it from Murphy Hesse, and again, it's on me as the chief administrative officer. The Clifford and Kenny just kind of slipped through the cracks, and then it's like, oh shit, we never got that back in front of them.
Do you recall why you didn't bring it in front of the board the following meeting?
We just didn't. I didn't have it back. I mean, I asked them. I didn't want to write it. I said, please send me something, something updated. And this was February going into March, so we were in the middle of town meeting season, and quite frankly, I think it just slipped. I don't remember. The Murphy Hesse one came back, and then there were a lot of things going on, and it kind of slipped off. It slipped off the list. It wasn't purposeful.
Okay. And then, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask Paul Schubert and Diane Kennedy, is that kind of how you recall, and do you remember this meeting and verbally giving your approval on this contract?
Yeah, Kevin said he'd like to have termination at will, basically in the contract. And there was discussion of whether, because it's a professional contract, termination at will is already, it's inferred. Therefore, you don't necessarily need to put it in. And there was discussion whether you need to put it in or not. And he said, I'd like to have it written in as termination at will.
Okay, but it was your intention to approve it. There were no other concerns you had with that contract?
I had none. No, I thought
Okay.
it was reasonable, but knowing how professional contracts work, it's an inferred basis of a professional contract. So I said, you can do it, but you don't have to.
Thanks.
No other reservations.
I remember it the same way, and it's funny because I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, but one of the reasons I remembered it is we were entering into, we knew we were going to be entering into contract negotiations, and we were very, very pleased with our employment counsel from Deutsch Williams. So it was kind of like a biting the lower lip, like, oh, what a bummer, because I can't remember his name. It was leaving. So, and I do remember that. And I remember having a discussion about even approving the contracts subject to the change coming forward, but that we decided not to do it. And then after that, I don't remember that it never happened, or that it was still lingering out there until we talked about it this summer when Chris had went back to all the contracts. So that's my recollection.
May I ask one more question? And then I noticed that as Chris, you pointed out, on the original contract, their retainer is $500 per month, and I reviewed it. And on the intro or the cover letter, it says 500. In the text, it says 500. However, at the bottom, right? In the text, it says 525, my apologies. And then at the bottom, it says our proposal is as follows, 500 a month. So my question for you is, what have they been billing us? And, you know, do they owe us some money? Because
Yeah.
it seems like this contract would say 500.
We actually didn't, and I'd have to go back and check the billing. I don't think we actually, because again, we didn't return this agreement to them, right? It never, even though I signed it and put it in front of the board for ratification, they didn't, you know, it hadn't been approved, so it never went back to them. So I don't think we actually were billed at $500. I have to go back and check, but I don't think we were billed that retainer for 2 years.
Can you get us an answer on that then?
Yeah, I know. I'll
So
check the
to be clear.
billings. I could pull them back out, but in fact, I don't think they did. Because we never returned to them, so it never triggered. Because if you notice, there was a little initial. I had to initial that piece, and they didn't get it back. So they never had.
So they've just been billing us hourly as far as.
Yeah, but yeah, at one
part.
point, I think we did flip it to that in the last year. But
Okay.
I have to go back and check. We have them monthly, so I can pull them out.
So,
Okay.
so the question is, because this is an administrative action that we've been trying to do since September, do we go ahead and just ratify this particular agreement, or would you prefer to wait until we have an answer to what the billing has been over the past couple of years? And then we can tee it up again when we have something from Brooks and Durensis. And that's, I have horse in the game. It's up to you guys, Paul.
Yeah, I'd like to
Paul?
settle it. I mean, I don't want to have to go back and find out. I think we ought to, at this point, settle what from this point on it's going to be. The billing is pretty straightforward, and that would just clear it up.
Okay. And just to be clear, and then Corey, I see your hand, all bets are off the table once and if we make other decisions relating to the legal services based on the results of our RFQ process. So
Yeah.
these are all open-ended and terminable at will by either party. Corey?
Yeah, I mean, entering this, I had questions and concerns, and hearing from both Diane and Paul about the intention of this. Again, this process kind of fell apart, and the reason we have processes so we don't end up here. I'm just going to remind everybody of that, especially because we have a contract that has different numbers, and we're not sure. We don't want to go through this again. So while I'm going to just say both, for the firm themselves, I'm not extremely impressed with attention to detail, and just operationally, I think we kind of messed up here. But at the same time, I'm with Paul. I'm comfortable ratifying this backwards, with the answers that I have today, so we can go forward and then, begin this process. So I'm comfortable with it.
Okay. Carrie, anything? Jack?
Yeah, I agree. I think
your
we
hand?
have enough info at this point after having this discussion to get it done, and I'm comfortable with moving ahead as well.
Well, I'm
Okay.
not.
Jack?
Okay. I guess what we've been seeing is I have been, by the way, filed a number of information requests, asked for copies of the actual agreements for a long period of time, over a year, a list of the attorneys, and I've not really gotten what I regard as full responses, no responses sometime. And I think when we're talking legal, any town business, we need to be paying attention to get it done right. So I'm very disappointed. I'm also disappointed in that the memo of what we're supposed to make our decision, claims that about the dissolution of Joyce Williams, completely ignores the fact that in fact our town council was Paul Durensis, and it was easily findable in the town meeting. Somebody sent it to me, and the intent of hiring Paul Durensis as a person as opposed to a firm was that the town wanted somebody to respond to. Now, whether we want to continue with that is, one thing. We may or may not. We'll find out. That's what this process, which I support, is all about. But I do think there's a problem when we're given information which appears on the surface to be erroneous, and then we're asked to make decisions upon what may not be, accurate. I'm not quite sure that Deutsch Williams may have broken up, but Paul Dorenzis was our town attorney, and the town decided to do that, and there are records that show that. I'm also not sure that there weren't interim agreements made some 5 or 6 years ago, which I don't have. But part of the problem is I ask for all these things and I don't get them. All
So-
right, and please let me finish.
I'm gonna
So,
give you a little
and-
rope.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm select board. I'm entitled to a little rope. Thank you. But I do think that we need to start being very specific about this. And I do think that we need to be getting the information. And I think when it's requested, it should be forthcoming. I had suggested 2 weeks ago that perhaps we should, on some of these matters, there's so much confusion and so many different records which may or may not be there, that maybe we should have a neutral special counsel. I hate to do that, but I think that we as select board members need to be sending an example that we are serious about the town being well-run, run the way it should be, finding out what's going on. And I would point out that we have a lot of dedicated town employees, and we want to show them that their dedication and proper adherence to standards is reflected through the whole organization. So I think I'm glad these guys have been paid. I have no opposition to any of them, but I would not vote for this because I think it's kind of saying it's okay for some procedures and practices that I think the town can do better than. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. And the intent of this entire process, especially the RFQ process, is to set up a framework that we all have an opportunity to weigh in on as the elected leaders of the town. And I really look forward to that. There is housekeeping issues, obviously, that we're just trying to kind of put behind us. And I really want us to focus on making things right going forward. And Jack, I will communicate with you. This board can't do anything about records requests, but you and I think Chris will
I think
talk about that.
I've
with
already
council.
answered that question, and I think there may be other avenues that need to be taken, but I would much prefer not to do that. Thank you.
Yep, great. Okay, so if anybody is interested in making a motion on the Clifford and Kenny ratification of the contract, kind of retroactive, I'll entertain a motion.
A quick question before we do that, if you
Sure.
don't mind. Are we
Yeah.
ratifying the 2018 original, or are we ratifying, if we're going to do something in backwards, I kind of feel like we should be ratifying the 2018 version, if that's the intent here. And then going forward, we can ratify the new one. But I feel like there's two contracts here, and I just want to do the right one, so we do this cleanly.
Sure, I think that makes perfect sense, actually. So we would ratify the 2018 one, which is, and I don't have that in front of me. What the term for that, is there a retainer term in there?
I have
Or
that in
there's
front
the
of me, yes.
problem, Corey, right?
This is exactly, yes.
There's the, right. So the problem is we don't believe we've adhered to the terms of the 2018 contract because we're not certain we were paying any kind of retainer. We were just being billed on an hourly basis.
Yeah,
But
I'm not-
that's information we don't have.
I'm not sure how I feel about doing the 2018 one now in hindsight, because I'm not sure that was followed correctly. I'm okay with moving ahead with the current one, but I'm hesitant about
Yep.
ratifying a 2018 one.
I do
Might
think
cost
it's,
us $500 a month for 2 years.
That's right. We may be paying money we don't need to pay.
Some of you may be voting with
Exactly.
me, for God's sake. Oh.
Right. I think it's important, then I think I would propose that we stick with the current contract, especially since we're in the middle of engaging their services. And this is an important understanding because we are in the middle of this arrangement with these terms. Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just tidying up this going forward. And whatever is passed is passed. We may or may not have been paying the retainer. We can find that out later, but let's straighten it out going forward.
Until we're not. Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Is there specific language we need to legally use for this motion?
I think it's just ratifying the current agreement as presented with Clifford and Kenny.
And I think that would be sufficient. I mean, do you want me to put it back up on the screen? Do you have that, Carrie? It was in the email.
I have it in front of me.
I think the word ratify is important.
I move that we ratify the Clifford and Kenny agreement dated on January 21st, 2021. Wow,
Second.
the rest of the sentence should be.
All right, we'll do a
End
roll
it there,
call
end it
vote.
there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote, beginning with Jack.
Jack Creighton, nay.
Corey, he's on the fence.
I'm stuck. Corey Evans, can I abstain? Is that okay? Is that an option in this? Corey
Yes.
Evans will abstain from this one. Thank you.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Carrie Thompson, aye.
Okay. So we have a ratified agreement with, and the only agreement that's still up in the air is Brooks Durensis. Chris and I will continue working with Paul to get something in front of us to carry us through to any new agreements in the future. Great. Okay. Fantastic.
That's it.
Great meeting. That's it. Thank
Motion
you.
to
There's
adjourn.
nothing. So is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, we have our motion to adjourn in a second. We'll take a roll call vote, please, beginning with Jack.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Carrie Thompson, aye.
Okay, great.
Thank
Good
you
night,
all.
everybody. See you tomorrow.
See you
Thank
tomorrow.
you.
all
Double header
tomorrow.
this week. Double header.